Thanks. And it's slightly odd to be able to be asked to summarize before we are ready, because there are interesting sessions coming. But yesterday, if you remember, we started out with the task of saving the world from apocalypse. Whether we did that with COVID or cyber or pandemics or whatever, climate change is somewhat doubtful, but that was the theme of yesterday. Today, after having tried to save the world yesterday, we have been trying to save Ukraine instead. Saving Ukraine from aggressive Russians, from unreliable Americans, from appeasing Germans, from dishonest Europeans, and I would say primarily saving Ukraine from itself. So that's been the theme. We started the morning with...
Yes. All right.
Sorry?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We started the morning with looking at the soft, the hybrid, and the hard security challenges that Ukraine is facing and what more can be done. But I think it was unanimous conclusion of that breakfast session that whatever the challenges are, Ukraine is in a far better position now than was the case just some years ago. And that is, of course, a rather positive conclusion. Then we started to dive into the real issues. And Nord Stream 2, I think there's a minor industry of people discussing Nord Stream 2. And those of us who follow the politics of Ukraine for somewhat longer period knows that issues of pipelines and gas prices, that's the bread and butter of the politics of Ukraine since decades, and Nord Stream 2 has added to that. Emotions were at display from different aspects of that particular debate. I would say two things only as observation on the debate. First, whatever happens with the pipes itself, lots of experts on that, European law and how that is applied, and that will be applied by the courts, is now central. Russia might have might, but Europe has right in the form of laws. And secondly, long term, the problem should be gone. Because the key task ahead of us is to get rid of this addiction to fossil fuel, call it oil or call it gas, that has been more or less pronounced in our respective economies and societies. And of course, the ex-Soviet space, by the way, is or has been extraordinarily addicted to fossil fuels. So the task ahead is a fairly major one. Then corruption. We tried to sort that out with the Speaker of Parliament. And the last question you had to him was whether it had been worse or better. And after a pause, he gave a fairly lengthy answer, the content of which was lost in translation, at least to me. Then, of course, the drama of the day. I don't know if that was inserted because of entertainment or because of substance. We all had to try to learn a complicated word, which I hope will not be an export product to the rest of the world. But in the debate about de-oligarchization, I think it was only proper respect for the social distancing rules that prevented that debate from having more kinetic expressions. Which way Ukraine will go? Anders was somewhat provocative, saying this sounded like Putin's way. Others were advocating the Western way, which is the rule of law and equal rules for everyone and transparency and those particularly boring things. But the minister wanted to have a third way. Whether that is possible without descending into the third world standards is a question that I think will be very keenly watched by the outside world in the months and years ahead. Then finally, I think we ended on a somewhat more upbeat note. The rule of law issue, but there was a discussion whether the economy is not bad or really good. And whatever that is, but I think it's not bad. I talk with Swedish businessmen who've invested here now and then, every time I'm here, 3 or 4 of them, and they are on the positive side. They are hardworking people who have made fairly significant success here. Some problems, needless to say, but they give me a fairly optimistic impression. And I think the most interesting figure I take out of this particular session was that for all of the emotions that we have with the billions of gas transit, IT service is more than twice gas transit. And that, I think, is something to keep in our back of our heads and give perspective to these particular debates. So, bumps, problems, challenging, but I think at the end of the day, it might, as a matter of fact, be the case that Ukraine is in the business of saving itself from itself, and might, at some point in time, actually be a Silicon Maidan. Thanks.